Hello, I'm Oscar. Imagine celebrating your birthday with your family, only for your wife to humiliate you in front of everyone by announcing a divorce. But the worst part, she had been lying to me for years, siphoning off my inheritance and destroying everything I built. At that moment, I realized everything was a game to her. But I wasn't going down without a fight. I had one card left to play, something that would change everything. What happened next will leave you frozen. The sun was starting to dip below the horizon, casting a warm, golden glow over the backyard. It was my birthday, and the small gathering of family and friends was everything I had imagined it to be. A simple evening filled with laughter, a few cold drinks, and the comforting hum of casual conversation. The decorations were modest, a few streamers here and there, a homemade cake resting on the picnic table, and fairy lights twinkling above like small stars. A perfect night. I was standing near the grill, turning the steaks, watching the guests mingle. Claire, my wife, was chatting with a group of our friends, but something felt off. I couldn't put my finger on it, but it was like there was a disconnect. Her laughter didn't have the usual warmth to it. It was as if she were performing, trying to make it seem like everything was normal, but I wasn't fooled. I tried to push the thought out of my mind, focusing instead on the evening's little victories, my career, the retirement that was finally approaching, the trips I was going to take once I had the time. For a moment, I allowed myself to dream of the places I would see, the quiet mornings spent fishing in some lake far from here. My son Brian and daughter Melissa were laughing with their cousins. They seemed happy, but there was something about the way they kept glancing at me, something almost cautious. I caught Melissa's eyes for a second and she quickly looked away. It could have been nothing, but something in my gut twisted. We all settled around the table for dinner, the conversation flowing in its usual pattern. Claire smiled at me from across the table, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. I thought I saw a brief flash of something. Guilt? Regret? But before I could focus on it, she turned her attention back to the conversation. I shook it off. It was my birthday. I had no reason to suspect anything was wrong, but something felt heavy in the air, an undercurrent of tension that I couldn't ignore. The evening wore on, and the mood shifted. I kept catching little moments, small exchanges between Claire and our kids, Brian asking about the future of my business, Melissa asking about my investments. I could feel the questions hanging there, like a veil. My mind wandered to the coming days, the months ahead. I had been working toward this moment for years. Retirement, the chance to unwind. The thought of it should have been comforting, but now it seemed distant, unattainable. I felt my chest tighten as the questions kept coming. Maybe it was just the stress of the transition, but why were they asking now? And why couldn't I shake the feeling that something wasn't right? Later, after most of the guests had gone, Claire took me aside. She handed me a manila envelope, its edges sharp and crisp in her hands. "I have a retirement gift for you," she said, her voice lacking the usual warmth. I thought it was a little strange. She'd already wished me happy birthday. I took the envelope, feeling the weight of it in my hands. A retirement gift. I opened it slowly, expecting perhaps a nice watch or a heartfelt letter, something to mark the occasion. But when I pulled the papers out, I was met with something that knocked the air out of my lungs. Divorce papers. The words were blurry at first, irreconcilable differences, alimony, division of assets. I looked up at Claire, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. My hands were shaking, and the world around me seemed to blur. I glanced around at the other guests, who were standing awkwardly in the background as if they knew what was coming. My children stood silent, their faces unreadable. Claire didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. She didn't need to say anything. The papers were all I needed. I felt the floor drop out from under me, the air thickening in my lungs. This wasn't real. This couldn't be happening. But it was. She whispered in my ear as I stood there, still holding the papers in my trembling hands. "I don't want to take care of an old retiree." The words stung. I couldn't process them at first. I felt my heart drop into my stomach. My world, our world, was crumbling in front of me. I looked at her, standing next to the man I didn't know, but who was clearly important to her. They were laughing, talking as if nothing had changed, as if everything was fine. It was like watching my own life being played out in front of me, a show I wasn't even a part of. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to react. I could feel the tears welling up, but I refused to let them fall. I folded the divorce papers slowly, carefully, and tucked them into my pocket. There was nothing else to do. For a moment, I just stood there, frozen. The world seemed to move around me in slow motion, but I was stuck. It wasn't until later, after everyone had left, that the weight of it all hit me. I wasn't sure when I had made the decision, but I knew one thing. The morning after was quiet, too quiet. It felt like the world had flipped overnight, and I was the only one still stuck in yesterday. The house was the same, the sun coming through the kitchen window like any other day. But everything felt off. I hadn't slept. Not really. The sheets felt too heavy, the pillow too soft, and the silence, it screamed. I had left the party in a daze, a rush of disbelief clouding my every thought. How had everything gone so wrong? One minute I was flipping burgers on the grill, laughing with friends, and the next, it all shattered. Divorce papers, Claire, my children, the life we had built together. It was all gone. And yet, in this silence, it didn't feel like anything had changed. The house seemed suffocating. The usual hum of morning routines, the sound of Brian and Melissa getting ready for school, the clinking of cups and the light chatter between Claire and me, it was all absent. I walked around aimlessly, almost waiting for something, anything to feel real again. When I finally reached the kitchen, I saw Claire. She was sitting at the table, sipping her coffee, staring out the window as if nothing had happened. She didn't even look at me. Her eyes were cold, distant. The woman I thought I knew was gone. "Claire," I said, my voice hoarse, "we need to talk." She turned her head slowly, the slightest hint of annoyance in her expression. She hadn't even bothered to pick up the phone. She didn't need to. She had already made her decision. "I've been thinking about this for a long time," she said calmly, setting her cup down. "This isn't about you anymore, Oscar. It's about me. I need a new life." Her words hit me like a slap in the face. She didn't flinch, no hesitation. It was almost as if she had been waiting for this moment, planning it all along. New life. After everything we've been through, I barely recognized my own voice, the disbelief still thick in my throat. "You're throwing it all away for him?" Claire sighed, almost tiredly. "It's not about him, Oscar. It's about my happiness. You were never a part of that." A cold rush of anger bubbled up inside me, but I bit it back. What good would it do? The truth was too clear to ignore. She had already made up her mind, and no amount of pleading or yelling was going to change that. I don't understand," I muttered, feeling the sting of humiliation crawl under my skin. But even as I said the words, I knew it didn't matter. She had moved on, and I was just here, holding on to a life that no longer existed. "I know," she replied, her voice flat, emotionless. "I've been checked out for a while now. You just didn't see it." I couldn't speak. What was left to say? It wasn't just the divorce, it was the realization that everything I had worked for, every sacrifice, every long night, every plan for the future, it had all been meaningless. In the end, Claire was gone. My children, they didn't care. I stood there for a long time, staring at her, trying to find something to hold on to. But there was nothing. The silence stretched on, thick and suffocating, until I finally turned and walked away. The rest of the day was a blur. I didn't know what to do with myself. My thoughts kept coming back to last night, the look on Claire's face, the cold detachment, the way she handed me those damn papers like it was nothing. How long had this been brewing? How had I been so blind? I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal, not just from Claire, but from Brian and Melissa too. They hadn't even seemed surprised. They had known. They had to have known. The way they acted last night, their questions, the way they avoided eye contact, it all made sense now. I went to my study hoping to clear my head. I sat down at my desk staring at the pile of papers that had accumulated over the years. Bills, financial records, old documents, none of it seemed important anymore. But there it was, the thing I couldn't escape. The kids, they didn't care. They didn't care that their mother was tearing our family apart. They didn't care that I had given them everything, everything I had, and they stood by, indifferent. The anger surged again, hotter this time. What kind of children were they? How could they look at me, their father, and not feel anything? The shame, the helplessness, it was overwhelming. I tried to push it all away. I grabbed the divorce papers again, the same ones I had stuffed into my pocket last night. I read through them one more time, as if seeing the words again would make them make sense. But they didn't. They still didn't. I was lost. Later that evening, I found myself sitting in the living room, staring at the empty space. The house felt like a ghost town. There were no more sounds of laughter or life. It was the weight of everything that happened the night before didn't fully hit me until the next morning. There was no sleep, just the incessant hum of my mind trying to make sense of it all. My body felt like it was moving on autopilot as I walked through the house, my eyes scanning the same old walls that had once felt like home but now seemed like a prison. I couldn't escape the thought of Claire's betrayal. I couldn't escape the cold, empty space between us that now existed. I knew I needed answers. I had to understand how this all happened, how I missed the signs, how I let it all slip away without ever noticing. I had been so consumed with work, with making sure everything was running smoothly, providing for my family. I thought I was doing everything right. But now, as I sat in my study, surrounded by piles of financial records, emails, and legal documents, I realized how blind I had been. I was going through old emails, correspondence between Claire and some contacts I didn't recognize. There were discussions about investments, meetings I wasn't privy to, and mentions of private accounts. I scrolled through them, my heart racing with each new discovery. There were so many things I hadn't seen before. It was like I had been living in a fog, unable to see the truth that was staring me in the face all along. And then I found it. Hidden accounts. Accounts that Claire had set up in her name, diverting funds from our joint accounts into these secret offshore accounts. It wasn't just a little bit of money, it was a significant amount. She had been moving money around for years, all without my knowledge. She'd even taken out loans in both our names, loans that I never knew about. I sat back stunned. I had been played. How long had this been going on? How long had Claire been planning this, preparing for her escape while I worked tirelessly to provide everything she wanted? The depth of her manipulation left me speechless. This wasn't just about infidelity. It was about her securing her future at my expense. I wasn't just losing my wife, I was losing everything I had worked for, everything I thought I could trust. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how little control I had over my own life. Every document I flipped through, every transaction I discovered, it was like a knife to my chest. I was drowning in a sea of lies, and the deeper I went, the more suffocating it became. I had spent so many years building this life for us, only to be betrayed by the very people I thought I could trust the most. My own children were complicit in this. The thought of them knowing and never saying anything twisted my insides. I spent the next few hours in silence, alone in my study, reading through everything again and again. I could hardly believe what I was seeing, but it was there, undeniable, and that was when I made a decision. I wasn't going to be passive any longer. I wasn't going to let her and the kids control me, manipulate me into this role of the weak, blind provider. I would fight back. But first, I needed more. I needed everything I could get. I had to plan. I had to act. The thought of confronting Claire again made my stomach turn, but I had to. I couldn't let her continue with this any longer. She was going to pay for everything she had taken from me. Not just the money, but my dignity, my trust, and my family. As the evening wore on, I started making calls. I reached out to my lawyer, asking for an immediate meeting. I needed to protect myself. I needed to make sure she couldn't take anything more from me. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about survival. I couldn't keep sitting by, letting this happen. I had to take control. It was time to fight for everything I had worked for, everything that mattered, and it started with protecting my future. The next day, I had to face my children, Brian and Melissa. They had to know that I wasn't just some fool they could manipulate. I was their father, and I deserved their respect. But as soon as I saw their faces, the disappointment was all too clear. I had hoped, maybe naively, that they would feel some sort of regret, some kind of remorse for what had been done to me. But there was nothing. No sympathy, no apology. I had to ask them. I needed to know if they had known about their mother's affair. Had they been part of this? Had they known and stayed silent? Brian didn't even look up when I walked into the room. He was too busy texting. Melissa, on the other hand, met my gaze, but there was no warmth in her eyes, no acknowledgement of the man who had raised her. "Did you know?" I asked, my voice tight with anger. Did you know about your mother? Brian looked up, nonchalant. We knew things weren't great, but it wasn't really our business, was it? Not your business? The words felt like a slap. This is my life we're talking about. My marriage, my family, my home. Melissa sighed, tapping her fingers on the table. Dad, we didn't want to pick sides. Mom wasn't happy. You were always so focused on work. It just didn't work anymore. It was like a punch in the gut. I had spent years providing for them, protecting them, only to hear that my own children had been so willing to sit back and let this. The weight of the past few weeks had worn me down, but I could feel a shift within myself. I had spent so many years catering to Claire, putting my family's needs above mine. I was the man who never complained, who never rocked the boat, but I wasn't that man anymore. It was time to stop being passive, to stop letting others dictate my life. I wasn't going to just sit back and let them destroy everything I had worked for. I sat alone in my study, the same room I had spent countless hours working in over the years. It used to be a place of comfort, a space where I could escape into my work, where things made sense. But now it felt like a battlefield. The room was cluttered with papers, financial documents, legal files, everything that would help me take back control. I could feel my pulse quicken as I thought about what was coming. I wasn't sure how I'd get through it, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to go down without a fight. I had spent far too long ignoring the signs. Claire's betrayal wasn't just about infidelity. It was about years of deceit, manipulation, and hidden agendas. It hit me like a ton of bricks. She had planned this all along. The affair was just the tip of the iceberg. The real betrayal was how she had been systematically draining our resources, setting herself up for a life without me, while I worked myself into the ground. She had been pulling the strings behind the scenes for so long, and now it was time for me to take charge. I wasn't going to let her or my own children walk all over me anymore. I had spent hours with my lawyer, going over every detail, every document, and every possibility. We started putting together a strategy, something that would ensure I wasn't left with nothing when all of this was over. My lawyer had advised me to be patient, but I couldn't. The more I thought about it, the more I knew I had to strike first. Claire had underestimated me. She thought she could take everything without consequence. I was about to show her just how wrong she was. As I sat there, I made a list of everything I needed to do: secure my assets, protect my investments, and make sure Claire couldn't pull the wool over anyone's eyes. The pieces were falling into place. My lawyer had already started drafting the necessary documents for a counterclaim. We would fight for a fair share, but more than that, I would fight for my dignity. The next step was confronting Claire. I wasn't going to let her think she could continue with this charade. No more silence, no more waiting. I was done with being the victim. It was time to take back control of my life. That evening, I drove to Claire's house. The same house that used to be our home, now a reminder of everything I had lost. I could feel the anger building inside of me, but I knew I had to stay calm. I had to keep control. As I walked up to the door, I could feel the weight of everything on my shoulders, but I knew this was the moment. I knocked, and when she opened the door, her eyes widened with surprise. I need to talk to you, I said, my voice steady, calm, much too calm, even for me. About what? She asked, clearly not expecting the confrontation. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. About what you've done. About everything you've been hiding from me. Her face paled as I laid out the details of her betrayal, everything I had uncovered, every move she had made behind my back, her affair, the hidden bank accounts, the loans in both our names, everything. You think you can just take what's mine and walk away? I said, my voice growing colder. You thought you could pull the wool over my eyes, but I know now. I'm not going to let you take everything from me. This isn't just about the money. It's about respect. It's about dignity. And you've lost both. She stood there stunned, her mouth opening and closing, but no words came out. It was clear she hadn't expected me to confront her like this. She thought I would stay silent, passive, just like I always had, but that man was gone. I'm not the same man I was when I married you, I continued, my voice growing firmer. I won't let you destroy me. I won't let you destroy everything I've worked for. You're going to have to fight me, Claire. And I promise you, I'm not going down without a fight. The room was silent for a long moment. Claire opened her mouth to say something, but I stopped her. "I've made my decision," I said firmly, "and it's not going to be easy for either of us. But I won't be the one who gets played anymore." I turned to leave, but as I reached the door, I heard her whisper, "You can't win, Oscar. You never will." I didn't respond. I just walked out the door, leaving her standing there, stunned. I spent the next few hours alone in my car, parked outside my house. My mind was racing. The confrontation had gone better than I expected, but I knew this was only the beginning. I had a long road ahead of me. There were more battles to come, and I wasn't going to win them all in one night. But I had taken the first step. When I got home, I sat in my study again, surrounded by all the papers, all the plans. My lawyer was already working on the next steps. And I had a weapon, one I had been keeping in reserve for the right moment. It was the recording. The conversation I had overheard between Claire and her lover. The way they spoke about how they could separate me from my money, how they could manipulate the situation in their favor. I had it all recorded, and I knew it was the key to turning this fight in my favor. I pulled the recording up on my phone and listened to it again. Every word felt like a punch to the gut. But this time, instead of feeling weak, I felt empowered. I wasn't going to be the fool anymore. This was the moment. I hesitated for a second, then made my decision. It was time to play the recording. It was time to turn the tide in my favor. The last few weeks had been a blur. I'd gone from anger to confusion to resignation, but today things would change. I wasn't going to play the fool anymore. The time had come for me to finally act. My hands were steady as I went through everything one last time. The lawyer was ready. The evidence was ready. The recording was ready. The pieces were all set. All I had to do now was make the final move. I sat in my home office, surrounded by old family photos and piles of legal documents. The room, once a place of comfort, now felt more like a battlefield. I could hear the distant hum of the neighborhood outside, but inside, it was quiet, tense. I wasn't sure what would happen next, but I was sure of one thing. I wasn't going to let them take everything from me. For years, I had put my family first. I'd worked tirelessly, sacrificed my time, my peace, everything for them. I thought they appreciated it. I thought I was building something solid, something real. But all along, Claire had been working behind my back, manipulating me, playing me for a fool. She didn't just cheat on me, she played with my life, my future, and the future of our children. I had seen the signs, but I had chosen to ignore them. I thought I could fix things, that I could somehow make it better. But now, the time for fixing was over. This wasn't about saving my marriage anymore. This was about taking back control of my life, of my future. And that meant playing the cards I had left, even if it meant destroying everything in the process. I pulled up the recording on my phone one last time. It was the key. The proof. Claire's voice, unmistakable, talking about her plans with the man she'd been seeing, about how she had set things up to leave me, financially and emotionally, in the dust. The recording wasn't just about an affair. It was about betrayal, manipulation, and a complete disregard for everything we had built. I felt a sense of justice as I listened to it again, but I also felt something else, a deep sadness. This wasn't how I envisioned my life, my family. This wasn't what I had worked for, but I had no choice now. I had to fight for what was mine, even if it meant hurting the people I loved. I had the upper hand now. The tables had turned. Claire thought she could leave me with nothing. She thought I would just roll over and let her take whatever she wanted, but I wasn't the same man anymore. I had the truth on my side. And that truth was more powerful than any manipulation or lies she could throw my way. I drove to her house, the familiar route now feeling like a journey into enemy territory. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, but there was no turning back now. I knew what I had to do. When I arrived, I walked up to the door with a calmness that surprised me. I knocked, and Claire answered. She looked at me with a mixture of surprise and disdain, but I wasn't fooled. I knew what was behind that look. She wasn't expecting me to come here, not like this. "I need to talk to you," I said, my voice steady, almost too calm. She stepped aside, reluctantly, and I followed her into the living room. The place felt foreign now. The warmth, the memories, everything had been tainted. It was just a house now, a reminder of what had been taken from me. I didn't waste time. I pulled out my phone and hit play. The recording filled the room, Claire's voice cutting through the silence. "You think I didn't know?" I said, watching her face drain of color. "You thought you could do all this behind my back and I wouldn't find out." Her expression faltered, but she quickly regained control. "Oscar, you don't understand." "I understand more than you think," I cut her off. "You've been planning this for years, using me, using our family's resources as if they were yours to control. You think you can just take everything and walk away? You're wrong." Claire's mouth opened, but no words came out. She was stunned, speechless. She had never seen me like this. Calm, in control, no longer the man who just accepted whatever was thrown his way. This time, I was the one in charge. "You're not getting away with this, Claire," I said. "I won't let you take everything from me. Not my money, not my dignity, not my future." Her eyes widened, and for a moment I saw fear, but it quickly turned to deflection. "Oscar, you don't understand," she began. "This isn't about you. This is about my happiness. You don't—" "Don't give me that," I interrupted. "You've been planning this for years, haven't you? You think this is about happiness? No, this is about you using me for everything I'm worth. But you've underestimated me. I'm not the fool you thought I was. I'm not going to just let you take everything and walk away without a fight." The tension in the room was palpable. Claire's defenses were crumbling, and I could see it in her eyes. But instead of screaming, instead of fighting back, I just sat there in silence, watching her squirm. Silence, I realized, was my most powerful weapon. She started to ramble, trying to explain herself, but it didn't matter. She could say whatever she wanted. It didn't change the truth. And the truth was, I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Finally, when the words ran dry, I stood up. "I'm done. This ends now." Claire's face twisted in disbelief. "You think you've won?" I met her gaze, my eyes cold. "No, Claire, I haven't won yet. But I will." I turned and walked to the door, not giving her a second glance. As I stepped outside, I knew that this was just the beginning. The quiet hum of the house was almost suffocating. Everything had led to this moment. After weeks of planning, strategizing, and reflecting on everything I had lost, I was finally ready. Ready to confront the truth. Ready to face Claire head on. I had the evidence, and I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. The time for waiting was over. Today, I would unmask the lies, expose the truth, and take back control. I sat alone in my study, staring at the papers in front of me. Everything had changed. The familiar surroundings, the comfort of my own home, now felt foreign. The family pictures on the desk seemed like relics of a time long past, each one a reminder of the life that once was. The betrayal that ran so deep, it had stained everything I had worked for. Claire's deception had gone on for far too long, and now I was going to make sure it ended. It had taken me a long time to get to this point, to gather the evidence and the strength to face her. But I was no longer the man who had been content to let her walk all over him. No, I was someone else now, someone stronger, someone who wouldn't let her destroy him. The lies were too much, and I wasn't going to sit in silence anymore. The recording, the financial documents, everything I had, I was ready to lay it out. Every little thing Claire had done to tear apart the life we had built, she wouldn't get away with it. I stood up from my desk and walked toward the door. This was it. There was no turning back now. I had the truth on my side. I had the power. The final confrontation was about to begin. Claire's house hadn't changed much since the last time I was here. It was still the place I used to call home, but now it felt like a foreign territory. I could feel the weight of the decision in my chest as I knocked on the door. The same door I'd walked through countless times before. But this time, it would be different. When she opened it, Claire's face was a mask of surprise, quickly replaced by defensiveness. "Oscar," she said, her voice cool, controlled. "What are you doing here?" "I need to talk to you," I said, my voice steady. I could feel her eyes scanning me, looking for signs of weakness. But there was none. I was done being weak. She hesitated but stepped aside, letting me in. The living room was exactly as I remembered, but now it felt cold. The warmth that once filled the room was gone, replaced by a tension that hung in the air. I didn't sit. I didn't even look around. My eyes were fixed on her. She knew what was coming. "I know everything," I said flatly, staring at her. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of everything I had discovered. Claire's face stiffened. She opened her mouth to say something, but I didn't give her the chance. "I've seen the recordings. I've seen the bank statements. I know everything you've been hiding. And I'm done letting you lie to me." Her eyes darted away, and I could see her mind racing, trying to come up with an excuse. But I wasn't interested in her lies anymore. I had all the proof I needed. "Claire, you've been manipulating me for years. Taking money, making decisions behind my back, using me. You think I didn't notice? You think I was too blind to see what you were doing?" I let the words hang in the air. "You're not the victim here. You never were. You've been playing me." She took a deep breath and finally spoke. "Oscar, you don't understand." I cut her off. "No, you don't understand. You've taken everything I gave you. And for what? For him. For a future you could have had without me. You really think I would just stand by and let you destroy everything?" Claire's expression faltered. For the first time, I saw a crack in her armor, but she quickly covered it up, trying to regain control. "This is all your fault, Oscar. You've never understood me. You've never given me what I needed. You're the reason I—" "Stop," I interrupted again. "You're not going to spin this, not anymore." She opened her mouth again, but the words weren't coming out right. She was losing control, and she knew it. "Tell me, Claire, how did you think this was all going to end? Did you think you could take everything from me and just walk away? Did you think I'd let you? Did you think I'd let you get away with it?" My voice was low, but it carried weight. Claire's eyes shifted uneasily. "Oscar, I don't want to hear it. I'm done listening to your excuses," I said, my voice cold. I pulled out the financial documents I had been holding on to, the ones that showed the unauthorized transfers, the loans taken out in both our names, the hidden accounts. "I've got all the proof I need, Claire," I said as I laid the documents on the table. "This is your last chance. You can walk away now, or you can face the consequences for what you've done." For a moment, she said nothing. The room was dead silent, and I could hear her breathing, shallow and fast. She was realizing just how far she had fallen. Finally, Claire's voice cracked. "You don't understand, Oscar. I'll destroy you. You think you can win? I'll ruin everything for you. I'll expose all our secrets, everything." I stood up, the finality of my decision settling in. "Do your worst," I said calmly, meeting her gaze. "But I'm not scared anymore." I turned and walked out of the room, the finality of my decision echoing in the silence. I wasn't going to let her win. Not now. Not ever. I sat there in the silence, my mind racing. The moment was finally here, the moment I'd been preparing for, the final confrontation. No more running, no more excuses. This was it. Claire had no idea what was coming, but she was about to face the full extent of what she'd done. I thought back to everything that had led me here, the years of sacrifices, the blind loyalty I had shown her, and the constant betrayals. It was all crashing down now. I wasn't that same man who let things slide anymore. I had become someone stronger, someone who had taken control of his life again. I picked up the file I had prepared, the evidence, the recordings, the financial documents, all the truths I had uncovered. I had gathered it all carefully, knowing that Claire had done everything in her power to tear my world apart. Now, I was going to take it back. As I sat in my study, I ran through everything in my mind one more time. I had already been through the pain, the betrayal. Now I just had to make her see the truth. It wasn't going to be easy, but I wasn't going to back down. Not this time. This wasn't just about a marriage anymore. It was about standing up for myself, for the man I had forgotten I was. Claire's house was eerily quiet when I arrived. The familiar smell of her perfume filled the air, the faint hum of the refrigerator in the background. It was the same place I had once called home, but now it felt like a battleground. I knocked on the door, and when she opened it, I saw her surprise. She was expecting something else, something softer, but I wasn't soft anymore. "I need to talk to you," I said, my voice calm but firm. No more hesitation, no more fear. She stepped aside and motioned for me to come in, but the tension in the room was palpable. This wasn't a place of comfort anymore. I could see it in her eyes. She knew what was coming. We sat in the living room, a place that once held laughter and love, now just cold, silent tension. I laid the documents out on the table between us, each piece of evidence a small but undeniable truth. "I've been patient," I began, my voice steady, "but the lies have gone on long enough. You've been lying to me for years, Claire. I've seen the recordings, the bank statements, the evidence of everything you've done behind my back. The money, the affairs, the manipulation. You've been playing me for a fool." Her face went pale. The bravado she once had was slipping away. But she quickly recovered, shifting her weight, trying to regain control. "Oscar, you don't understand," she began, her voice shaking. "I had no choice." "You've never understood me." I shook my head. "No, I understand perfectly. You've been using me for your own gain, for your own happiness. And I've let you because I thought I was doing the right thing." "I've been a fool, but not anymore." Claire's lips trembled. She tried to deny it, but the truth was already laid out before her. I wasn't going to let her twist this anymore. "I'm done with the lies, Claire," I said, my voice low but firm. "I'm done with the manipulation, the secrets, the deceit. You're not the victim here. You never were." She stood up suddenly, her voice rising. "You're paranoid, Oscar. You don't get it. I've been protecting us. Protecting you." She gestured wildly, trying to justify her actions, but I wasn't having it. "No, you haven't," I replied, my words cutting through the noise. "You've been protecting yourself, Claire, and now you have nowhere to hide." I paused for a moment, letting the weight of the truth sink in. Claire was pacing, trying to find a way to turn things in her favor, but I wasn't going to let her. I reached into my bag and pulled out the final piece of evidence, the recording of Claire talking about her affair, how she had been planning everything, using me as nothing more than a stepping stone. I hit play, and Claire's face drained of color as she heard her own voice, caught in her lies. The room was silent except for the words coming from the speakers. "I didn't think you'd ever hear this," she whispered, her voice faltering. "But I did it for us, for the future, for everything we had." Her words made my blood boil. How could she sit there and still pretend she wasn't the villain? The woman who had stolen from me, lied to me, and tried to break me. "You're a hypocrite, Claire," I said coldly, my eyes locked onto hers. "You've destroyed everything we built. And for what? For your own selfish needs." Claire's face twisted in anger. "You don't understand. You've never understood. I did what I had to do." I remained calm, watching her unravel. "No. You did what you wanted to do." I stood alone in my apartment, the weight of the moment pressing down on me. I had come so far, from the man who used to bury his emotions to the man who now faced his fears head-on. Today, everything changed. There would be no more hesitation, no more allowing Claire's manipulation to control me. This was my final stand, and I was ready for it. The journey hadn't been easy. I'd lived in denial for too long, convincing myself that everything was fine, that things would work out. But now, with the evidence in hand, the truth was undeniable. It had taken me years to get to this point, but I was finally seeing clearly. Claire's deceit had shattered everything. My trust, my family, my peace. But now I had the power to take it back. I paced back and forth, rehearsing what I was about to say. My lawyer had already helped me secure my finances, and I had prepared for every possible move Claire might make. But the most important part wasn't the legal battle. It was about reclaiming my dignity. I was done being a victim. Just as I was about to leave for Claire's house, something caught my eye. A small piece of paper tucked away in an old drawer. It was a receipt, a small detail I hadn't noticed before. But this was it, the last piece of the puzzle. A clue that revealed Claire had been taking money from my personal account without my knowledge. It was the final weapon in this battle. I felt a rush of clarity wash over me. This confrontation would end it all. When I arrived at Claire's house, I didn't waste time with pleasantries. There was no more pretending, no more dancing around the truth. As soon as she opened the door, I could see the shock in her eyes. She had expected something else, but I was beyond giving her the benefit of the doubt. "You know why I'm here," I said, my voice calm but unwavering. I wasn't here to argue or beg for answers. I was here to end this. We moved to the living room, the same place where we had once shared our lives, now a battlefield. I placed the papers on the table between us, the receipts, the recordings, the proof. Claire's face drained of color as I laid it all out. The lies, the betrayal, the manipulation. Every single thing she had tried to bury was now exposed. "You've done a lot of things behind my back, Claire," I said. "Financial decisions, affairs, lies. You've hurt me and you've hurt this family, and I'm done with it. I'm done letting you control me." Her eyes flickered with panic. She tried to deflect, her words stumbling as she searched for a way out. "Oscar, you don't understand. This was all for us, for the family. I did what I had to do. I was protecting you." I shook my head, unmoved by her attempts. "No, you were protecting yourself. You used me, Claire. You used me to get ahead, and now you've ruined everything." I hit play on the recording, and her voice filled the room, clear as day. She talked about the affair, about her plans to secure her future by any means necessary. I watched her face crumble as the truth hit her. There was no denying it now. Her voice wavered as she tried to spin it again. "I didn't mean for things to get this far," she pleaded, her desperation leaking into her words. "I was afraid, Oscar. I was scared. I thought you'd leave me if I didn't." But it was too late for excuses. "You didn't think of me, Claire," I said, my voice sharp. "You only thought about yourself. And now, there's nothing left between us." I stood up, and for the first time in a long while, I felt powerful. She might have tried to manipulate me for years, but this time, I wasn't backing down. "I've already started the legal process. You can't hurt me anymore." Her face twisted with anger. "You think you've won?" she spat. "You think you've got me cornered? I will make sure you regret this. I'll expose everything. Our life, everything we've built, I'll make it public." I looked at her, unwavering. "Do your worst." She didn't expect my calm. She was used to me reacting, to me getting angry, to me pleading, but I wasn't that man anymore. I had nothing left to say to her, nothing left to lose. I was leaving. I turned and walked toward the door. "This is over, Claire. I'm done." But just as I reached for the door, she made one last attempt, desperate and unhinged. "You can't just walk away from me," she yelled. "I'll make sure you lose everything. I'll make sure you can't escape me." I paused, but I didn't look back. The only thing that mattered now was my future. "It's already over," I said, stepping out into the night. I was free. I sat alone in my apartment, the weight of everything that had happened slowly sinking in. The confrontation with Claire had been everything I needed it to be, and yet there was still a lingering sense of uncertainty. The dust had settled, but the aftermath of the battle remained. I hadn't expected to feel so conflicted, but here I was, finally free, and yet still haunted by what I had left behind. I reflected on the journey. I had spent so many years letting Claire control the narrative. I had given her the benefit of the doubt, excused her mistakes, and even blamed myself for the cracks in our relationship. But standing here now, I could see how far I had come. I wasn't the same man who had walked into that first confrontation. I was stronger, more resolute, and finally in control of my own life. The phone buzzed on the counter. It was a letter from my lawyer, a final piece of the puzzle. My legal rights were clear now, my future secure. The divorce was final, and Claire's manipulation no longer had any hold on me. I had made the right choice. It felt like a chapter had ended, but a new one was just beginning. The next few days were quiet, but something inside me began to shift. Memories of the past came rushing back, and I found myself questioning everything. The good times, the laughter, the vacations we had taken as a family. I couldn't help but wonder if I had made the right decision. Could things have been different? Was I too quick to walk away? The doubts swirled in my mind as I looked at old photos. Family gatherings, holidays, birthdays, moments that had once felt like the foundation of my life. But as the memories flooded back, they were tinged with the bitterness of everything that had followed. The betrayal, the lies, the manipulation. My mind kept returning to one question. Was I really better off now? It was in the middle of this internal struggle that I ran into Mark, an old friend from work. He had heard about my situation and was eager to offer his perspective. We talked for hours, and I found myself surprisingly relieved. Mark had gone through something similar years ago, and he shared his experience of rebuilding his life. It's hard, he said, but you get stronger. You just need to keep moving forward. Don't let the past define you. His words hit me harder than I expected. He was right. I had spent too much time looking back, second-guessing myself. The only way out of this was to keep moving forward. I made a decision that day. I wasn't going to let the past hold me back any longer. I signed up for a local art class, a hobby I had abandoned years ago. It felt good to create again, to lose myself in something that was mine and mine alone. The process was therapeutic, and I could feel myself letting go of the anger and regret that had plagued me for so long. I also rejoined the gym, a place where I once felt in control of my body and mind. It was strange at first, but the routine brought a sense of stability. Slowly, the man I had been before Claire's betrayal started to resurface. Strong, confident, and unapologetic. I had finally begun to rebuild. A few weeks later, I invited Brian and Melissa over for dinner. The tension was palpable at first. I had been distant with them since the divorce, and I knew we needed to talk. They had been part of the family for so long, and yet their silence during the whole ordeal had been deafening. But as we sat down to eat, the conversation slowly shifted. I told them everything, the pain I had felt, the mistakes I had made, and the consequences of their mother's actions. They listened, their expressions unreadable, but I could tell something had changed between us. When the conversation turned to their mother, both of them seemed to realize just how much they had taken for granted. Brian was the first to speak up, admitting that he hadn't been as supportive as he should have been. Melissa followed, expressing regret for not reaching out sooner. We didn't have all the answers, but we were starting over. Slowly, the walls began to come down, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of hope that we could rebuild our relationship. As I sat in my apartment that evening, I looked out the window, feeling a sense of peace wash over me. It had been a long journey, but I was finally free. The past no longer had control over me. I had my life back, and for the first time in years, I was in charge of my own future. Just as I leaned back, the phone rang. I glanced at the screen, and my heart skipped a beat. It was a number I didn't recognize. I picked it up, my curiosity piqued. "Hello?" I said, unsure of what to expect. The voice on the other end was unfamiliar, but there was something in it that made my heart race. "Oscar, this is Susan. I've got an opportunity I think you might be interested in." As she spoke, something stirred inside me, an excitement I hadn't felt in a long time. A new opportunity, a new beginning, and for the first time in a long while, I smiled. The future was waiting.